Hey, what's up, FTK? I'm here today with Humberto Benyoto. Hopefully, I said that right without killing it. The CEO of Clear out of Miami. This is a very interesting company on the cutting edge of some technology. As you know, at FTK, we are very pro sex worker, and anyone who's doing in the adult entertainment world, no matter what part of the sex work, especially following people and companies who are relying on technology to make things safer and easier and more affordable, is something that we want to promote. Humberto, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Mac.
So if you don't mind, just give us a little bit, what is Clear?
Sure. So Clear is a technology company. We are specializing in testing for the adult industry only. We are part of a healthcare conglomerate that also owns a laboratory, a clinical laboratory called LabDX, and also other operations in the healthcare space. But Clear specifically is a testing company for the adult space.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed that was important is that it's PASS certified. And I don't,
Yep.
obviously, what is being PASS certified mean?
So PASS, as you might know, is the sort of the regulatory body in the adult industry. They were created by the FSC back in the day to sort of regulate or determine how testing is conducted in the industry, to sort of serve as a beacon for testing. And so they established the protocols for testing, what kind of tests are done, how often they're done, what instrumentation is required to be used by laboratories that want to be PASS certified. And as with production companies, agents, and performers, obviously, they obviously support PASS in the sense that because PASS establishes these protocols, they know that being PASS certified means that they went through a set of due diligence processes to become like Clear did, and everybody else who's a PASS certified lab. They went through a set of protocols to ensure that the lab is conducting the tests that the industry requires, including HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, and all the tests that are part of what's called the Performer panel. So PASS is basically just a regulatory body that vets companies like Clear to ensure that they're doing the same thing as everybody else, that they're not just coming up with a test that they think is good for the industry.
Perfect. All right, that will clear it up, because even I mean, I know what PASS is, but I didn't know there was that big a process, right? And so having that clearly defined process. One of the things that I read about Clear is that obviously you were trying to be economical. And so if you don't mind, I don't know, it may be proprietary, and if it is, you can tell me, that's no problem. But how much significantly less of a cost is it to use Clear, say, versus someone else?
So I would say that the margins for testing in the adult industry are not high. It's a very tight margin. The tests that are required by PASS are very costly, and rightfully so, because you want to keep people safe, right?
Sure.
So, for instance, the HIV testing that we do and that the other companies that are PASS certified do alone cost over $50. So, and that's because you've heard a lot about PCR testing with COVID. You could get a PCR test, you could get an antigen test. And the PCR is sort of the holy grail of testing when it comes to laboratory testing. It's a very, very sensitive test that can pick up traces of a disease in a very small sample. So because HIV is something that you want, obviously, to prevent performers from contracting, they decided to go with a very accurate, the most accurate HIV test, and therefore there's a lot of cost involved there. In terms of the cost as a laboratory, and not to start geeking out on laboratory, but laboratory is a volume game. And what that means is, if you're not doing a test at volume, hundreds, maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands of tests per day or per month, you're losing money, because the machines are really built to do volume. They're not really built to do one-offs. In the case of Clear, because we're just starting, we've been in the business, actually open to the public, about 2.5 months.
Okay.
We don't really have a huge customer base yet, and we're limited to Miami, which is one of the smallest markets in the industry.
Sure.
So for us, to be able to get to that volume, we need to do one-offs. And sometimes we do a dozen tests, sometimes we do 2 dozen, sometimes we do 3. One of the things we do different is we're open on Sundays. And so because people don't know yet, we do have one-offs on Sundays that show up and they're like, oh, I didn't know you guys were open. They show up and we get to test those guys. And honestly, it comes at a cost to us. We make no money because we're running one test on a machine that's capable of running 100.
Sure.
So it is very costly to run the volume of samples that we're running right now. It's going to come with scale when we go to Vegas and LA. But that's the price we pay to play the game right now. It was just, we were aware of it in the beginning. On the performer side, we try to be as economical as possible and try to be a little bit cheaper than the other guys. Not a lot cheaper, just because, like I said in the beginning, the margins are not wide. But right now we're offering discounted testing. We reached out to a lot of folks on Twitter, giving away free testing so they can try us out. But generally speaking, we're about $10 cheaper than the other guys. And it may not be a lot, but when you have to get tested twice a month, plus you having to incur the cost of, we have a lot of performers that Uber to us from different parts of South Florida. Every little bit counts. And so we're just trying to be mindful of that. And if we can reduce the cost by perhaps modifying the panels at some point, and we have very fluid relationship with PASS and having discussions around that, if we at some point can modify the panel to test for HIV, for example, a different way, and that translates into a cost reduction, obviously we would pass that on to the performers too.
Well, so even at where you are now at $10 one, that's still $240 a year. So I mean, our $10, $240 a year is $240 a year. That's something you have to do over and over and over. And right. Speaking of that, I kind of you brought up going to Vegas. So is that on the next place that you're looking to go? Vegas, LA?
Yeah, so we're actually looking for space in the Van Nuys area, like LA, San Fernando Valley. We looked at a couple properties already. We haven't really made a deal, if you will, because we want the performer experience, the customer experience, to be beyond what they're used to, if you will. Put a lot of time and effort into the space that we have here in Miami to make it welcoming and just top notch. And some of the spaces we found in the area were not really what we were looking for, but we're continuing to look. Our goal is to open something up in the next 2-3 months. California is very tough in terms of regulation around opening a clinical space. There's some licensing issues, like everything else, exactly. So we think horizon for us is roughly 3 months to have a LA location, and perhaps a month or 2 later, a location in Vegas.
So speaking of the Vegas, out here in Nevada, we have brothels. We have legal prostitution. And you're talking probably, I don't know, there's 21, I think, active right now, somewhere in that ballpark. Thousands of, courtesans a year, right, with turnover. Is that a market that you'll also want to service while you're there?
Absolutely, yes.
That's 4 times a month, right? Because that's every 7 days in that business.
Exactly. That's something that when we first came into the industry, we knew that there was a need there too. We said it's not in our wheelhouse right now because we're in Miami. Obviously, it's not legal here, but certainly when we go to Vegas, that's something we're going to be exploring, because it's kind of hand in hand. You just need to pivot to that one demographic, if you will.
Yep. What really is the separating value, right? When you look at Clear or somebody else, what sets you apart from everybody else?
So we focus a lot on the experience of the performers. We want them to feel comfortable when they come in. Obviously, price is one of them. We talked about the $10 difference there, but I would say the experience of not just coming into the space, but the booking experience. We offer appointments, so they don't have to just walk into a facility and just kind of wait in line if it's busy. They can set up an appointment ahead of time and show up, and somebody's going to be waiting for them there. The appointment is already going to be on the screen. All they got to do is draw blood, pee in a cup, and they're out of there. So the experience generally takes like 8 minutes all in. We have assigned parking here in the Miami locations. I have 3 parking spots right out here, and they don't have to be looking for parking in the busy parking lot. California, for example, I'm in California often. It's nearly impossible to even order coffee. So I think they will appreciate having assigned parking there. So I think it's, for us, it's we put a lot of time, not just on the Clear side, but all of our companies will put a lot of time into the customer experience. Just the booking process, just being welcomed in the space. I think having people in the company that understands the industry is important, because I know that with some of the collection sites that other companies have out there that are not specific, they're sort of their main area, they have these draw stations that are sort of third parties. We heard from performers when we were doing our homework in the beginning that they just don't feel welcome, because there's a little bit of judgment, if you will, when you go to one of these sort of physicians' offices, and they kind of know what the business you're in, and it's human beings, so they don't feel as welcome as they would if you go to a facility that understands what industry you're in. You're there, they welcome you, and they go on and do your test. So a lot of time a lot of effort into the customer experience, and also the follow-up, because when somebody tests positive, for example, for say chlamydia, there are a lot of performers in the industry, as you know, that are new to the industry. They've never tested positive for an STD before. So when we were first thinking about this, we said, okay, what are we going to do if we make a call to somebody who's 20 something years old and say, hey, you're positive for chlamydia, good luck? We can't do that. So we formed a partnership with TBD Health, which is a company based out of Vegas. They provide telehealth appointments where they can e-prescribe a medication that they can go and pick it up at Walgreens and CVS. So we wanted to make sure that even when we've delivered our end of the deal, if you will, we're still kind of holding their hand and making sure that they get the medication they want and that they're taken care of. So I think if I had to summarize, I would say the customer experience is one of the things that we really focus on.
Well, just from hearing what you were talking about there, that has to make a lot of people feel a lot more comfortable. I mean, we're talking about an industry who obviously has to deal with a lot of, issues and judgments from the outside world. So to feel welcome, and I love the fact that you guys have follow-up.
Yep.
I know I have friends, obviously in the adult industry, and you're right. It's like, hey, you tested positive, thanks, and that's it. To have a follow-up, to have someone, there's a lot of young people, like you said, new, not knowing what to do right away. Maybe you don't have a lot of friends that can turn to. That's really cool that you guys are doing that, man.
Yeah, and hopefully they're testing for something that's kind of minor, like chlamydia, for example. Obviously, nobody wants to have an STD, but certainly nobody wants to be told that they have HIV or something more serious that's life-changing. But whatever the case, we would be there with them, and that's really important to us, because we're human beings first, and I think that's important to remember. No matter, we might be in a business to customer relationship, but at the end of the line, there's a person, and that person has family and his kids, and so we got to be mindful of that.
100%. What are the biggest? You're in the industry, right? You're in the testing industry for the adult. What's the biggest challenges, that you guys face on? Because I know that you look at the brothel business, because they are required to wear condoms. They don't have as much, reported thing. But you can't do that in the adult industry. We're a big support of the adult industry, and condoms takes away such a part of the theatrical,
right.
part of it. Is there stuff coming? I know you probably can't really say, but to even be better or quicker response. I do know that sometimes I've heard a lot of people talk about, because you got 14-day test window. Do you think that there's ever a possibility that I might shrink down to a 7-day test window to further protect the workers?
So that's interesting. We're just having a conversation about this 20 minutes ago, and we are very much still learning about the industry, and we're very transparent about that. Yeah. But the 14-day window was just, I wouldn't say randomly chosen. Somebody at some point in the past system or somewhere made a decision that 14 days was like a reasonable amount of time. The reality is, even when we think about COVID testing, for example, people would say, I got a COVID test before I got on this flight, and somehow magically I have COVID. Yeah, because you've been exposed the whole way. You touch things, people coughed in your face. So testing is only the test that you do, no matter what test in this industry, any test that you do is only as good as your last partner in this specific case, right? So if you're, no, we are having a conversation with a performer earlier today, actually, that came to get tested with us. And he said, look, I know people that get tested and then they go out and have sex with partners that are not in the industry and they're not tested. So how do you know? The 14-day window, I think, is a reasonable amount of time for folks to get tested, just like we had with COVID. People would have to get if they're working in an office, they had to get tested every so often. But that's just because it's best practice. It doesn't mean you're going to keep everyone safe.
Sure.
It's just a best practice that somebody decided at the time. I think the challenge with reducing the amount of time is cost, because it's already very costly for performers to get tested. They're paying out of pocket $150, with us $149, sometimes more, depending on where they go. And to ask them to get tested every 7 days I think would be tough. Personally, just from from a clinical perspective, having run the lab for about 9 years now, I think that the solution is going to be a hybrid of a full panel like we do every 14 days and some sort of a rapid test in the middle, in between.
Okay.
Some sort of what we have now with the antigen test that you can pick up at a pharmacy, right? You swab your nose, you put the solution in there, and it says positive, negative. It's not a lab test, but it's some sort of it's something.
Just a little.
So I think, yeah, some sort of a rapid test that gives you some indication of, do I have these? Maybe I'm not testing for these 10 things, including HIV, but I'm testing for these 5,
Okay.
and it's like $20 or something like that. And I don't know what that product's going to look like. That's certainly something that we're going to be looking into in partnership with PASS, but that's kind of how I see that happening. And honestly, to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, the cam world, so people that are not in mainstream production, I think if I had to guess, I would say that some testing might be needed there at some point, because some of the people in the cam world are having sex on camera, even they're having sex with their partners or people that are not their partners. And so I think because they're at home and because the economics there are different, I think there might be a combination of some sort of at-home test that they might be able to do to show that they're safe. So that's kind of how I see that happening.
That'd be cool, though. That'd be really cool to see.
Yeah, because
people don't think about the cam world.
Yeah, and I think if I was PASS and FSC, I would think that that's something that they're concerned about. What we've learned from our doing our homework is that when I think 15, maybe 20 years ago, the government threatened to step in and do something because people were testing positive for these things, and maybe they were showing up at hospitals, and FSC stepped in and said, hey, we got to do something. And that's how they kind of became the system of record, or through PASS, they became the enforcer, if you will, or the organization that sets the protocols for these things. So I would have to guess, and again, we're new to the industry, but just looking at it from an outsider, which in a lot of ways gives us a little bit of an advantage, I would have to guess that with the cam world, there's going to be some sort of enforcement at some point. It may not come in the form of you have to get tested every 14 days like professional performers have to do. But I think something is going to be needed. And I don't know what that is yet, but I think it's going to be some sort of a rapid test.
Okay, cool. You brought up COVID a couple of times. Is that something that gets tested for, COVID?
We do COVID testing here, yes.
That's not part of is that part of the qualifications? Or
it is not.
It's not.
It is not. As far as I understand, it never was. As far as I know, TTS, which is one of the companies that provides testing for the industry, and they're actually here in Miami too. As far as I know, they made the COVID test, the PCR test, part of their protocol early on in COVID. It wasn't something that PASS wanted. But for us, it's never been a requirement. They can get a PCR test if they wanted to. We also do a rapid PCR, which is results in 45 minutes. The price is the same. And we also do an antigen test, which is like the stuff that you get from CVS for free. So
Gotcha. Okay. And then I did read somewhere that you have a partnership going on with like the Free Speech Coalition and Pineapple Support. So if people are members of them, they can get a little benefit too with you guys, right?
That's right. Yeah. So early on, we wanted to be associated with reputable organizations. FSC is obviously, we talked about them already, and then Pineapple Support is a phenomenal organization. And we met the owner or the founder, and we thought the cause makes a lot of sense. It aligns with our goals. So let's just partner with them and see how we can sort of give back. And so the way the partnership works is members of the FSC or sustaining members of the FSC or Pineapple Support, when they sign up for those to be a sustaining member, they can use their email address to get a $10 discount code every time they get tested with us.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we've seen some success with both of those. So it's been going great, and we look forward to partnering with other companies too. I mentioned TBD Health, the company that we partner with for follow-up. It was kind of the same thing there. There is no sort of financial involvement there, but it was sort of the same thing. This is an established company. They have a name in the industry. They're known. Let's partner with them because obviously, they know what they're doing, and we want to be associated with companies or organizations that have a rapport with the industry.
Absolutely. It helps you bring more value, right? I mean, just in what you've already said, that helps you bring more value than the next guy for sure.
That's right.
Okay, so I know we got to wrap this up, but I want to, for all the people who are NFTK or anyone who sees this, if they want to book, if they want to get with you guys, how does that work? What should they do?
So we actually built a mobile website. They can log into, they can either go to getclear.com, and that's spelled getclrd.com, not the entire word clear, but getclrd.com. They can browse around, look at the pricing, look at the location here and the address. And when they click on get tested, they're going to be brought to our app, which is a mobile website where they can create an account. And from there, they can book their appointment directly on their phone. They can, if they have a discount code, which we've been giving those out on Twitter, they can plug that in, get the discount. They'll get an email with the location, instructions on how to get here, and their results are sent to them directly to their phone in the same way. So it's a very friendly experience. The app actually looks a little bit like Amazon, where the navigation, like the buttons are on the bottom, so it's very easy to kind of get around. They can actually initiate a chat directly from the app. So if they have any questions about pricing or anything, they can chat with our customer service directly from the app. So very friendly experience. And so, but to get there, it's getclear.com, and they just click on get tested, the green button on the site.
All right. What I meant to ask you, what is the average turnaround time for one of these? Because that's a lot, right? What did you say, 10 things you're testing for? Is that right?
That's right. And some of them come out like within an hour, like the chlamydia testing, for example, is one of the tests that we do. And others take a little bit longer just because of the cycle on the instrument. We track every metric in the lab, not just for Clear, but all of the other testing that we do with our partner lab. Our turnaround time right now is about 8.5 hours. Nice. From the time we collect the sample. So we actually had a performer come in this morning at, she was here at 10:15, and we started running the sample. We actually resulted her sample at 3:30. So it was just shy of 6 hours. But we're very big on turnaround time. We know there's a lot of sort of anxiety around, when is my test going to be here? I have a scene tomorrow. If they don't come back in the morning, I'm going to have to call the producer, and there's going to be mayhem because they got to cancel things, they got to schedule things. People are already on their way. So we're very big into turnaround time. If for some reason we're not going to be able to deliver the results in a turnaround time that we promised, the same night. We contact every performer and let them know this is the updated ETA. So we're again, to my original point earlier in the conversation, we're very big into the customer experience and just making sure that we're exceeding the expectations when they come to test with us.
Well, that experience is what's going to set you apart, man. You guys are going to do great things. I can feel that. I can't wait till you guys are in Vegas. When you get to open up your other locations in LA and Vegas, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that we send something out to all of our members, let them know that those locations are now available.
I appreciate that. That'd be great.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If there's anything you ever want to get information-wise out about your company to our community, email it to me and I'll make sure it goes out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mac. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'll let you get back to it. And if you thank you again so much for being here with us. All right.
All right.